Ultimate Marriage. Today we are talking about
setting biblical boundaries for movies, media, and music.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this. I think the main section is going to be talking about movies and shows because that's kind of the biggest way that people consume media outside of social media. This isn't a conversation about social media that much. It's really a conversation about what are we entertained by, what do we allow in our homes, what are we going to unify on, what we allow on, because that's generally different in almost every marriage that we've seen. Is that, you know, the guy might be more comfortable with this, the girl isn't comfortable with that, and there's this battle that we get of, you know, what is good, what is not good, what is sinful to watch, what is not sinful to watch, what are you comfortable with, what are you not comfortable with, how do we deal with those things in our marriage? Anything to say on that? I think that, you know, we've had this struggle over the years, right? Like this is something that we've, you know, Veronica's doesn't like something that I'm like, oh, okay, I think that's okay. Or I like something and she doesn't think that it's okay. And so there's, we've had these conversations. This is a very real conversation for our marriage and a journey that we've even been through. So how does this apply to marriage? I'm assuming you've had conversations about this. Media is a big part of the modern life, you know, from your phone, from your TV shows, from your movies, from the music that you listen to. I think we're mostly consuming media much of the day. So before we jump in to the conversation, again, this is a podcast that's available on YouTube. It's also available on Spotify and Google Play and Stitcher. And if you guys want to listen to that, you can also leave a review on the iTunes store. That'd be hugely helpful for us. We actually have, iTunes has an algorithm that really extends the presenting of the show to new people based off of how many reviews it has. So if you guys, the more reviews you leave, you just have to tap the stars. You don't even need to write anything. And that would really help the exposure of the show. The last thing I'm going to mention before we start is if you guys are interested in coming into our 6-week program. We've changed it from a 12-month program. Then we thought about doing a 12-week program, and then we realized I think we're going to just do it as a 6-week program, which is a ultimate marriage mentorship program, training you how to have a godly marriage. And so if you're interested in doing that, just go to ultimatemarriage.com/notify. Okay, I love movies, and Veronica doesn't. Share your story about movies. Like, how do you view movies?
I feel like it's a waste of my time. I would much rather be productive in cleaning my home or getting laundry done or hanging out with a friend, having a meaningful conversation than sitting down watching a movie.
And you would think that would be like how I think about it because I'm the guy that likes to do, you know, the teach and the study and all those things.
Yeah.
But movies are a relaxing way for my brain.
For you, it's like the only way to shut your brain off.
Yeah. Is to be entertained somewhere else.
To be zoned out or something by watching a movie. Where my form of relaxation is like taking a nap and just laying down or resting. Yeah. Not watching a movie.
Yeah. So we've, you know, now Veronica doesn't
don't get me wrong. Yeah, there's movies here and there that'll come up that I like, but for the most part, I'm very rarely interested in watching a movie.
Yeah. There's a handful of movies that Veronica likes, and we'll watch those sporadically through the year or every
Usually
other
just
year.
When we're sick.
Yeah.
Or if it's, you know, we've been cooped up inside because of winter for too long.
Yeah. Or you're in labor.
Or hey, yeah, I do watch movies when I'm in labor.
Yeah, that's another place that I'll finally get her to sit down and enjoy a movie for a little bit. Take her mind off of that. Yeah, I love movies. I love, you know, my favorite movie is probably The Count of Monte Cristo. With Jim Caviezel, I think is his name. He's in that movie. He's the guy that played Jesus, so it's super holy. Back to the Future trilogy. That's probably, again, one of my all-time favorite. I love the Back to the Future trilogy. Saving Private Ryan. I just finished watching Operation Finale, which is a really cool story about the outcomings of World War II. And but don't get me wrong, I actually don't watch movies that much. I used to, but I watch a couple movies a year.
I think, once we start having kids, it's just impossible to watch a movie without an interruption, or if the kids are asleep, we fall asleep before the movie can end.
Yeah, so like
so tired.
yeah, if I'm sick, that's when I get a chance to watch a movie. Or if
Mhm.
I like am just totally need to go have a rest day, I might put on a movie. But movies aren't a part of our weekly activity. That's not something that we do as a family. And neither are TV shows. We'll watch some Everybody Loves Raymond. As you guys know, that's a funny joke for our we've been watching it for so many years. But even then,
just Dale and I, to be clear.
yeah, we're not watching it with the kids. But the idea is that we still don't watch a lot of TV shows. We haven't watched a modern TV show in years.
Mhm.
That's just not something that we do in our home. And the kids aren't watching modern movies and modern TV shows really much either. And so this is a conversation of how we've kind of come to the people that we are with entertainment and media. And it has been a journey to get to this place. And TV consumes more and more of you. Once you start watching it, and you start to feel like it belongs, and that if you don't have it, you don't know how you get along without it, and that's when it starts to take a place in your heart and in your mind and in your day that really should only be taken by God or your family. And so TV in general, media in general, does absolutely steal a portion of your life that
It basically turns into an idol.
It does.
Yeah. So how should we determine what is appropriate to watch or to listen to in our homes? Dale and I get questions all the time, emailed to us, written to us on Instagram, wherever, from wives usually asking what they should do when their husbands insist on watching a movie or a show that has some type of sexual content or nudity, cursing, killing, just lewd and vulgar.
Yeah.
So how do you follow biblical principles without just taking your TV and throwing away, which, hey, you can do that too.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But
or TV room.
Or our TV room. So we have a few questions that we want to ask you guys to help you examine your heart and to make decisions that will keep you holy, obedient, and wise in when it comes to media.
Yeah, and it's something that makes your marriage feel secure and safe, and your kids feel secure and safe.
It's boundaries, putting up boundaries.
It is, and yeah, and so we're going to talk about why we put up boundaries, how important this is. This is a really important and I would say pretty deep conversation today. So if you feel like it's like, oh, movies, like so what we're talking about, trust me, we're going to go a little bit to the deep end of the pool here in a minute. So it isn't just about movies. It actually has nothing to do with movies. It has everything to do with sin, with obedience, with love, with holiness.
It has to do with your heart.
With your heart.
Yeah. So the first question that we are going to ask you is, are you entertained by what God hates?
Hey, this is still you. These are still
I know.
your notes.
I'm just saying.
Oh.
I'm just letting there be a pause for dramatic effect. Come on, babe.
Are you entertained by what God hates? Humor has such a good job. Humor can literally mask and sanitize anything to somehow making it palatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it desensitizes you.
It totally does.
So do you find joy in movies and shows that promote divorce or lying or stealing or adultery? Do you enjoy the suspense of horror movies, or are you amused by death?
Yeah.
I
Gross.
Personally am not.
Me neither.
Do you watch TV shows with nudity or sexual or explicit content?
Yes.
Which pretty much seems to be everywhere.
You just
can't get away from it.
You can't get away from it.
Especially in modern television.
In modern television, yeah. And that's why we don't watch hardly any modern television. Personally, this is, guys, speaking to the guys here, I would say I have a pretty high tolerance for violence. I have a high tolerance for even some bad language. I have come over the years to have zero tolerance for nudity. And the reason is because the violence, it's make-believe. The bad language, it's being acted out.
Well, and generally, the movies that you watch that are violent or have bad language in them are like military, historical movies.
War movies.
And war movies, yeah. They're like showing things like that. And
not like, I'm going to go murder this dude in the back alley. Like, I'm not into that kind of stuff. But so, the reason is that the violence is make-believe. And that's why I can have that high tolerance. The bad language is, again, it's being acted out. But the lady is actually naked. And I'm actually watching. And so that's the problem, is that is very real. And so while the other things aren't real, that is real. And so there's a bit of a difference between those two things. Some of the ladies probably aren't as comfortable with the violence or the gore in terms of a military movie like Saving Private Ryan or something, or even sometimes with the language of those things. Again, and some guys might not be either. That's just my personal thing, but I draw the line on that. And that seems to be a big conversation between a lot of families.
Yeah, and I don't generally mind you watching those kinds of things. I'm very sensitive to any type of killing or excessive lewd language, and I'm just very sensitive to that.
Well, and we have
I
to
just don't watch it at all.
we have to remember God made men differently than women, and this is one of those examples. There's a reason that men can go to war week after week, month after month, seeing people die, being killed, and still wake up the next day and do it again. Women aren't designed to do that. And the same thing plays out when you're in a war movie. So yeah, don't expect your wife to go and just watch a war movie. I know some women can. But I don't know. I don't know any man who walks away from a horrific, like a horror movie, vulgar or sexually explicit film, and is more godly because of it. That's not what happens. It doesn't make you more like God if you're entertained by horror, or by sexually explicit content or drug use or like some of this like really gross stuff. It doesn't make you more godly. And you know, what's really happening is these movies that have this explicit content, it's desensitizing you to sin. It's making you kind of comfortable with it. It's more common, you know, and it also deadens our capacity for joy. And I thought this was I was doing some research on this, and it was John Piper that said that line. It deadens your capacity for joy. And I thought, ooh, that's really good, because that's true. If you imagine somebody who watches this kind of stuff, that just fills their mind with this filth, it really steals away your ability to be joyful. You start framing up a worldview that's just a little bit gross. And they literally steal away, these movies will steal away the thing that makes you so attractive to an onlooking world, which is joy and hope. And you start watching enough of this stuff and filling your head and heart with enough of this stuff, and it actually strips away the thing that God actually puts upon us to make us attractive to the lost. And so I'm going to put it bluntly. The only nude woman's body that a man should be looking at is that of his wife's. And so if you see, now there's a difference. I know sometimes you guys are watching a movie together and you've never seen it before, and a nude scene pops up. Okay, men, it's your job to immediately, if you can, click stop or click pause, fast forward to that scene, make a distinction. Are we going to keep watching this? Is it likely this is going to be continuing on in the movie? Or is this maybe just a one-off thing? You know, you're going to have to make a decision, or you just turn it off. It's not that big of a deal just to turn the movie off to make your wife feel comfortable. And trust me, guys, I failed here before. You know, this is a journey for a lot of families and a lot of couples to figure out where's that threshold. And I've been convicted just going, okay, no, just turn it off, or talk to your wife. Hey, do you want to fast forward through this and see if we can watch the rest of this movie? Leave it up to her, especially in these moments, because movies are generally tailored toward the lust of the man's eye and not the woman's eye. And so it's a naked woman. It's not necessarily naked men, which again, in my experience and understanding of women, they're not real excited about that anyways. So I'm going to read Matthew 27 through 28. It says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old," this is Jesus talking, "You shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Okay, guys, the guy who guards his eyes shields his heart. And so you just have to recognize that your eyes are a gateway to your heart. And when these things pop up, you got to work on guarding your eyes and shielding them. Even when you walk around town, when you are on social media, whatever it is, guard your eyes, because they are a gateway to your heart. And if you're going to cheat with your eyes, you know what? It's just not too far behind that you'll cheat with your body. I've seen that. That's the guys that look at porn. Oh, you'll cheat with your eyes, and you cheat with your heart. Oh, you'll cheat with your body at some point too. And so, there's a quote by Oh my gosh, I always forget the guy that made this quote. It's not Chuck Colson. Anyways, he says adultery starts in the head before it occurs in the bed. And this is, again, you're watching shows, you can commit adultery just with that woman that's in that movie. So we want to guard against those things.
Cool. Next question to ask yourself while watching a movie or show, whatever it is. Will this movie or show make you more like Christ? Now, you might be thinking, what movie or show will?
Yeah, right.
Especially like I said earlier, in today's culture. But is it wholesome? Is it clean humor?
Yeah.
There's few of those out there.
There are.
Yeah, but they are out there. Does it teach you history, or is the story just fun and moral and exciting? If so, then watch it.
Yeah, again, I think of like Lord of the Rings. Like it's one of those things. It's fun. Cool, exciting narrative. And sure, there's some rough stuff in there that might not be appropriate for a kid, but for maybe a teenager is fine. Or I think about Lincoln, right? For the movie Lincoln. I thought that was great. It's some great history in there, some understanding. And there's an HBO series called John Adams. There's some good stuff on the history side. Stuff about World War II. And there's some things about clean humor, and those things exist too. And we try to find those things as much as we can for our kids, which are very rare to find. There's really two positions in the church. And I'm going to share them, and I want you to identify with which one you generally partake in. And the first position is minimal holiness. And what that's saying is, what's the minimum amount of personal holiness I need to get into heaven? And that is actually, sadly, and again, I know that it's not of works, but in terms of like, what's the minimum way that I can walk to stay righteous and not be sinning against God?
It's like when you're talking to a young couple who's struggling with staying pure. They're like, okay, well, like, what can we do?
How close can we get to the canyon?
What can we do before sinning?
Yeah,
like you're asking yourself the wrong question.
Yeah, exactly. It's how close can we get to the canyon without falling in? It's a bad.
Can I stick my foot over it?
Yeah, exactly. It's just hanging over there. I won't fall.
I haven't fallen in, but it's over there.
Yeah, and so this is again the minimal holiness position, and sadly, a lot of the church adopts this. And when questionable activities, the way that it's shown is that when questionable activities, movies, should we go over, we're dating, we're not married yet, should we go over and hang out at your house by ourselves? Questionable activities arise. They ask, what's wrong with it? Like, what's wrong with it? Right? Like, in reality, it's just watching a movie, right? What's wrong with it? Mm-hmm. Right? And maybe it's with modesty. Oh, what's wrong with it? Right? Like, that's the posture that they're taking. It's a posture of wanting to know how close you can get to sin without sinning. And the second category, which I hope that we all are aiming for this category, is the maximum holiness side. And this is not asking what's wrong with it, but instead asking, will this make us more like Christ? Mm. Will this movie, this activity, this dress, this outfit, this job, whatever it is, make me more like Christ? Will it protect and edify my wife or husband, and edify even my brothers and sisters in Christ, my children even? Will it help me lay up treasures in heaven? Will it help me be more discerning of what is evil and what is good? These are good questions to evaluate. Will it put my holiness in or my spirit in danger? Like, will I injure my soul? Will it help me love people more? These are really good questions that we need to be asking about opportunities. And so a guy named Jeff Abbott, he was a mentor of mine, maybe 10 years ago. He told me once, he said, do you remember Jeff? Mm-hmm. He said, maturity is putting a process between opportunity and decision. And you have an opportunity, I can go do these things or this thing. And then you have a process between that opportunity and making a decision if you're going to do those things. And that's what I'm saying here. You get some questions. Is this activity going to make me more like Christ? Is it going to protect my wife or husband in this matter. You know,
And this applies just to so many areas of life, not just what movie you're watching.
totally. Yeah, how much time you're spending on social media, what type of music you're listening to. And a lot of you guys, you know, love a certain type of music that, again, just the lyrics are terrible, you know. And we've even had this in our marriage. You know, Veronica grew up in the hood, and you know, just cleaning out some of those things that we just listened to as kids.
Well, or even before we had kids. I mean, we're Christians before we had kids, but I'd say very lukewarm in certain areas. And there have been times, even since having kids, where I'm like, when I am out and I don't have the kids, and I'm just like, I haven't listened to this album in years. I'm going to put it on because it takes me back. And like 30 seconds in, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. And I have to like turn it off because I can't tolerate that anymore.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
We just did this a couple of days ago. We turned on Home Alone. Okay, 2 years.
This is with our kid, without our kids.
Without
It
our
was just
kids.
us.
This is me and Veronica and a friend, and we're sitting there. We turned on Home Alone, and we watched this 2 years ago, no problem, just Veronica and I. But we watched it, and I just go, man. And not because it's like offensive to us. I mean, it's just I don't want to say offensive. Not that it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sin because I'm watching this. It's because I'm going, look at these children, the way that they're speaking to each other.
I don't even think we got past the first scene.
I just go, wow, this is filth. I don't need to have any of this involved in my heart and brain. And it is hard kind of becoming separate from the world because you go, oh man, I can't watch that. Sin and love are the exact opposites, and I want to explain this. Love is benefiting others at the expense of yourself. Sacrifice. Sin is benefiting yourself at the expense of others. They are exactly the opposite. And so, you know, in decisions with your wife or your husband, or the decision you're going to make about watching this show or being entertained by these things, you know what? There's sacrifice involved. Our flesh loves this stuff. It's filth. And so you just got to really put up some good boundaries to protect your heart.
Third question. Do you want to be holy like God is holy?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read a scripture. 1 John 2:15 through 17. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the world? When this verse is referring to the world, what is the world?
Yeah, this is a good question because it's talking about don't love the world. Well, what is the world? Is it like the flowers? Because is that part of the world? Is it, you know, the house that you own? Is that part of the world? No, the world is anything that presents itself against the will of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which I think pretty much everything that comes out of Hollywood generally does.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the love of things in the world and the love of God are incompatible. They just don't work.
Yeah, you have to realize that. Like that, what it's saying there, it says, do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. That's saying that the love of things and movies and worldly things that stand against God's will and the love of God are incompatible. They don't work together. Like they just can't be a part of the Christian life. And by the way, people, if you guys are listening, Veronica's going to answer a question about our kids here later. So some of you moms that are probably wondering like, oh, like what do we do with our kids on this topic? She's going to hit that answer here in a bit. And so the word holy, this is a big word. What does it mean?
Set apart.
Set apart. Yeah. Different.
Mm-hmm.
To be, it actually in Hebrew, the word means to cut away from. And so to be separate. And so if you read the Old Testament, you'll actually see so many examples of God calling his people to be holy, to be separate. Mm-hmm. I mean, they literally, they work different schedules. They live differently. They eat differently. They dress differently. They have all these ways of making themselves look different than the other nations. And Christians are called to be holy too. In the New Testament, it says, for God is holy, you need to be holy. Be holy as God is holy. And God doesn't give us commandments that we can't fulfill. So we need to be holy. And that means that we get to work differently. That means that we get to dress differently. That means that we get to manage our food differently. That means that we get to watch different shows and look at media and entertainment differently. We're constantly trying to look like a peculiar people. And if you live in the world and love that stuff, it's evidence that you don't love God. That's really what's going on. And so we get to look and watch things that are different. Why don't you read this scripture right here? And I messed up our notes here, but that's fine. Yeah, because this is you love Philippians, and I think you'll be able to talk on this.
Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things.
Yeah, so I just, if you're a Christian who's watching sin-filled shows and movies and media, you're either denying the Holy Spirit and sinning, or you're not a Christian and sinning. And so we have to evaluate, am I entertained by this stuff? Which is, again, the first questions. I'm going to go over them again. Are you entertained by what God hates? Will this movie or show or media or song make you more like Christ? And then the third question we just went over here is, do you want to be holy like God is holy?
So next scripture.
Yeah, we got a lot of scriptures here, and then we'll move on here to some.
Next scripture, Titus 2:11 through 12. For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us that, denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in the present age. Christians are really comfortable with sin when they don't understand how holy God is.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point. The reason we're okay with it is that because we think that God might be okay with it.
Yeah, we project our fallen nature onto God and make him like us. And newsflash, God is never going to be like us.
No. Yeah.
It's a form of self-medication.
It is. And, this idea of self-medication is that you're trying to make yourself feel better about how gross you are. And so you're medicating by saying, projecting that, God might be okay with a little bit of this stuff. It's not that big of a deal, right? It's not that big of a deal. What's wrong with it? Again, we talked about that.
God is holy.
Yeah.
He's a holy God, and he is okay with zero sin.
Zero sin. Yeah. And so, I think it's a good statement that she made, is that Christians are comfortable with sin. Christians are, who are comfortable with sin, just don't understand how holy God is. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to just, look at that and understand, really who God is, who Christ is, what he calls us to walk like, how he calls us to be. So the big question that we want you guys to evaluate is, do you want to be entertained by things that Jesus came here to die for? And examine your life. Do you need to cleanse out some stuff?
Purge.
We've done it. I feel like we do it every year. We just did it a couple days ago with Home Alone. We're just like, oh, dang it, that's gone now too. It's as you become more like Christ, the love of the things in the world, that the desire for these things just goes away. And if it's not going away, you need to seek the Lord and you need to seek the Word. And it's because you're not being sanctified.
And ask yourself if you've made an idol out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's filling something in your life that only God should be doing. And so, don't ask. We can watch it because it's got a certain rating. I just watched a G-rated movie a couple days ago that had a terrible, immoral theme underlying it.
And it's a kids movie.
Yeah. And we try to watch, movies if we can before the kids do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is something, if we're going to let our kids watch them, I want to watch it first.
There have been times where we don't, but I guess I'll answer this in the question later.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things that we try to do. But it's about asking yourself, is the content going to desensitize me? Is it going to deaden my joy? Is it going to make me less like Christ? Again, these are questions that I want you guys to ask yourself. And the last point is just men, if your wife is uncomfortable with you watching something, I've made this mistake. I'm sure many of you are listening and have made this mistake. If your wife is uncomfortable with something that you've watched or are watching, and she asks you or she makes it evident that she's uncomfortable, just turn it off. Just turn it off. You want to, Christ says, or in Ephesians, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Just give yourself up for her. Like, just go, okay, you know what? Cool. I won't watch that. Do you really care about that show and that scene more than you care about your wife? I hope not. And so just let it
Put
go.
up a fight and have a big argument because of it. Like,
Yeah.
is it worth it?
And if it is illogical, turn it off. Have a very quiet and gentle conversation about it. Hear her heart. Talk to her about those things. And possibly she's misinterpreting this. And then you can walk through it and go back and watch that show if it's not what she thought it was. And so those are just some points. So we got a question. Veronica's going to hit it. She's done yawning.
Yes. So the question we got is, how much TV and media do you allow your kids to watch per week? Well, this year, as you guys know, has been insane. We've been sick a lot this year. There's when we had a fever in our house for 21 days, and we were all sick and vomiting and colds, and our son has asthma, and I had Lyme disease and miscarriage. And so there was a lot of seasons this year where we've been sick. And so our kids have actually been watching way more TV or movies than I would like.
Yeah.
But ideally it's, maybe a show a day, but there have also been long seasons where our kids will go weeks without watching anything.
Yeah.
But right now I think we're still trying to get our, I feel like we're just coming up for air.
Yeah, get our pace back.
We've been drowning for so long with just trials. I feel like we're just coming back up for air. And so there'll be a 30-minute slot of time during the day where I'll let the kids watch something so I can catch up on things that I've been putting aside for so long, and they're just, starting to add up and build up. And then let me see. Another thing that I was going to mention earlier when Dale brought it up with this movie that he watched, we're also absolutely not afraid to turn something off in the middle of our kids watching it.
Yeah.
If there's something that is on and we see something or hear something that we're just like, hey, like that's not right. We'll shut it off right then and there. And sure, they'll fuss and why'd you do that, Mom? And I'll just tell them the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so in those moments, then I'll just change it to something that I know for a fact that we don't have an issue with. And then something else that a friend of ours, mentor figure of ours, mentioned once is we're training our children's appetites. Mm-hmm. So if we're constantly watching TV, you're training your child to have an appetite for that. Mm-hmm. Or if you're constantly reading books, you're training your child to have an appetite for more literature and more reading. And so that's just another thing to keep in mind. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, as a dad, I sometimes notice things that maybe Veronica misses, and she notices things that are generally more on the sensitive side, and I'm noticing things more on like the underlying theme of kids' movies. Mm-hmm. And so now every good movie has a plot. There's, you've probably heard the book about 7 basic plots. So there's only so many plots that you can have. And generally, even in a good movie with a heroic ending, or there's a plot of tragedy, there's a plot of trial, there's a plot of a problem. And those can be really bad, and those can be really okay as long as the narrative of the show is actually redemptive, it's good. And so those are hard to find in most shows. And they're also age appropriate. So there's certain things
I should say that.
that your 3-year-old can't watch that your 9-year-old can, that your
Right.
15-year-old totally can.
Yeah, because there have been shows that we watch and we're just like, okay, like, not yet. Our kids aren't ready for that yet.
Yeah.
They can watch that, I don't know, when their maturity level is to that level of what that movie shares or shows. But
yeah, and so this is the journey that you have to look for. I also, as a dad, I look at the underlying themes. As I said, I'm so sensitive to this stuff. I can discern if there is a sexuality agenda that's below it. I can discern if there is a just a sense of disobedient agenda below it. The disobedient
Which is
children.
a lot of kids' movies.
Yeah. I can discern if there is some sort of gender confusion agenda that's under it. And there's a lot of these things that are happening in the movies today. We got to keep an eye on that stuff, on how it goes into your head. And again, if your kids, watched it one time, they're probably not going to catch it. But if it becomes that movie that your kids watch a couple times a year and they start buying the things and singing the songs and all the whatever that stuff is, trust me, Satan is all up in this stuff. Okay? Like, just don't think that there's these like perfectly holy movies. And so, our kids, they usually watch, if we can, like, what's
I
the
actually put on YouTube a lot. There's
what's that
this
series?
cartoon called The Beginner's Bible.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
a lot of you guys probably have that little kid's Bible. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they make Bibles, but it's called The Beginner's Bible, and it's just these cartoons of Jonah and the big fish, or Noah's Ark, or the creation story, the birth of Jesus. It's just the main Bible stories, David and Goliath.
And there's some other ones that like are made by Hanna-Barbera, like which made like Scooby-Doo and stuff. They're from like the 70s, and they're like cool. They're a little bit more intense. You got to watch them, but like Bible stories. So we do a lot of those kind of things if the kids are going to watch a show.
Yeah, it's so funny. We put that on the other day, and in the introduction, there's like a 3 or 4 minute introduction of this guy talking.
Oh, Charlton Heston.
Yeah, he's just sitting there talking, like explaining the story before it goes into the cartoon part. And Arya's like, "Oh, Mom, this guy just tells me all about the story, and then the show's gonna start." It's just like so funny how
he's like 70 telling the story. So, so there's things like that. And our kids, we watch a lot of stuff from the 80s and 90s.
Clifford. Although there's certain ones that I'll fast forward or I'll skip the
Berenstain
show.
Bears.
Berenstain Bears.
Those are the things that we try
but
to
also
put up.
Even watch those with a filter.
Yeah.
Because most of them are usually fine, but every now and then you'll come across one that you're just like, oh, okay, we're not about that.
Yeah. So again, it just takes us being intentional and putting up these boundaries. And they are important because a lifetime without these boundaries will lead you into an appetite for things that are opposite of God. And a lifetime with these boundaries will make you more holy and make you more separate.
And by the way, we're the same way with books.
Oh, yeah.
We have lots of kids' books, and we've thrown away quite a few. There were multiple where Dale just like throws it straight in the fireplace.
I totally have. Yeah. Like,
He's
I'm like, wait.
This book is garbage.
Yeah.
Throw it away.
Yeah.
And just don't be afraid to do that. You have to be on guard for the hearts of your children and your own mind. So
especially
do
because when they're young, you're literally developing their conscience, their understanding, their moral compass. And so you got to be extra on guard when they're young.
Who cares if you paid money for the book?
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Yeah, throw it away. Yeah, I've bought movies for $20 to watch as a family, and have been renting it or buying it for on Apple TV. And we're sitting there for 8 minutes in. I go, okay, I'll turn that off.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now what are we gonna do? Because I just told the kids we're gonna do a movie night, and so I have to go looking for something else. But we do it just because we want to protect their hearts. So again, guys, if you get a chance, you know what we didn't do? We didn't do the memory verse.
Memory verse.
And guys,
that I read a little bit ago.
this is like a cornerstone verse. So
I tried to have this memory verse. I tried memorizing it a while back, and I forgot about it, but it's a good one to have memorized. Especially, I think I needed to memorize it for just the season of motherhood that I'm in.
Yeah.
So Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That is Philippians 4:8.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys can get some memory down on that. A couple things before we close. If you guys want to watch this video, if you're a regular listener to the show and you're just, done it always on Spotify or on iTunes, you guys can watch this. Just go to ultimatemarriage.com / actually, I always say this. It's not / Just go to ultimatemarriage.com and then just go to the podcast page. That's the easiest way to get there.
You can also just watch it on YouTube.
You can watch it on YouTube there,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and you can subscribe on YouTube. But we have all the links and all the scripture and all the one-liners that I try to gather from what we said in the show. They're all available there. You can also listen to the audio there as well, download it, whatever you want to do. You can share that with a friend. And then again, would you guys consider leaving a review? Just going in right now to the iTunes app and just, even right now as the show's going, just tap the stars. If it's, give us a, whatever rating you I hope it's a 5-star, but give us a rating. And those, again, really help the exposure of the show. And then the last thing, again, we're going to mention is that if you want to be part of our 6-week program, we're going to open this up. It's closed most of the year, but we're going to open it up in the beginning of the year sometime within the first couple months of the year. And we have a waiting list of people that want to be in this next group. If you want to be in this next group, this awesome 6-week program, these much longer, in-depth conversations about theology of marriage and biblical roles and these kind of things. If you want to be involved, again, go to ultimatemarriage.com / notify. I think that's the end of the show today.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, guys, we will see you next week on Ultimate Marriage. Take care.
See ya.